My boss promoted the guy who plays video games at work. Until the CEO asked where I went. The blinking cursor on my screen seemed to mock me as I powered through another client emergency at 8:47 p.m. on a Friday. My colleagues had long since departed for weekend festivities, but here I was, fixing yet another problem that wasn't technically my responsibility. I wasn't flashy. I didn't speak up much in meetings. But while everyone else showed off, I made sure the most demanding clients stayed happy behind the scenes. My name is Ethan Rivera. On paper, I'm an administrative assistant at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. My official job description involves scheduling meetings, answering phones, and managing my boss's calendar. But reality tells a different story. For the past 3 years, I've been the invisible support beam holding up our most valuable client relationships. While account managers took long lunches and created flashy presentations, I was the one who answered panicked calls at midnight when campaigns went sideways. I was the one who remembered that Mrs. Johansson from ArcLight Industries was allergic to cilantro before company dinners. I was the one who built rapport with executive assistants and receptionists who held the keys to decision-makers' calendars. Tonight's crisis involved Pacific Northwest Holdings, a client worth nearly $7 million in annual billings. Their CMO had discovered a typo in a presentation scheduled for the board on Monday morning. Not just any typo. Their company name was misspelled in the header of every single slide in a 47-page deck. The account manager responsible? Trent Dawson. I checked my watch. Trent was probably at Stone's Pub right now, celebrating another week of doing the bare minimum while somehow remaining our director's golden boy. My phone buzzed. It was Janet, Pacific Northwest executive assistant. "Please tell me you're working a miracle, Ethan," she said, tension evident in her voice. "I'm rendering the corrected presentation now," I assured her. "I've personally reviewed every slide twice. You'll have it in your inbox in 15 minutes, and I'll stay online until you confirm everything looks right." The relief in her sigh was palpable. "You're a lifesaver. Seriously. Mr. Collins would have had heads rolling if this went to the board as is." "Just doing my job," I replied automatically, though we both knew this wasn't actually my job. "Well, your boss should be thanking his lucky stars for you. Lord knows Trent never returns my calls after 4 p.m. I smiled despite my exhaustion. "Let's keep this between us. I'm happy to help." After sending the corrected presentation and receiving Janet's confirmation, I finally packed up to leave. The office was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the gentle hum of the HVAC system and the occasional ping of the elevator down the hall. As I walked to my car, I scrolled through my messages. 3 other clients had contacted me directly today, bypassing their assigned account managers to get actual results. It had become such a common occurrence that I'd created a separate folder in my email just for these, unofficial, client communications. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos. I balanced a tray of coffees while navigating through the security door, having learned long ago that a well-timed caffeine delivery was the best way to ensure I could get what I needed from the department heads. "Morning, Lisa," I called to our receptionist, who glanced up from her computer with a grateful smile as I placed her vanilla latte on her desk. "You're a saint, Ethan. Oh, Darren was looking for you." My stomach tightened. Darren Walsh, my direct supervisor and the director of client services, rarely sought me out unless something had gone wrong, or he needed me to fix something that had gone wrong. "Any idea what it's about?" I asked casually. Lisa shrugged. "No clue, but he seemed in a good mood, so probably not bad news." I nodded and continued my coffee delivery route, saving Darren's Americano with an extra shot for last. When I entered the client services department, I immediately spotted Trent's empty desk. No surprise there. Monday mornings weren't his strong suit. Through the glass walls of his office, I could see Darren engaged in an animated phone conversation, gesturing enthusiastically with one hand while the other adjusted his perfectly styled hair, a nervous habit he'd never managed to break. He waved me in when he saw me. "Absolutely, Ms. Winters. We're very excited about this partnership too. You're in excellent hands with our team. Darren's voice carried the polished charm he reserved for high-value prospects. Yes, I'll send those details right over. Have a wonderful day. He hung up and swiveled toward me with an uncharacteristically broad smile. Ethan! Just the man I needed to see. I set his coffee on the desk. Morning, Darren. Lisa mentioned you were looking for me? Indeed I was. He took a sip and nodded appreciatively. Perfect, as always. Listen, I need the Pacific Northwest first quarter review materials organized for the meeting at 2. Can you make sure everything's ready in the main conference room? I hesitated. I thought Trent was handling the Pacific Northwest account now. It had been a recent reassignment that still stung, considering I'd been their unofficial point person for over a year. Darren waved dismissively. He is, officially. But this is an important review, and you know how detail-oriented Janet and Mr. Collins can be. Translation: Trent had likely done minimal preparation, and Darren was worried he'd embarrass himself in front of a major client. I'll take care of it, I said, swallowing my frustration. Excellent. I knew I could count on you. Darren was already turning his attention to his computer, clearly considering the matter resolved. Oh, and when Trent gets in, could you walk him through the deck? Just so he's up to speed. My jaw clenched. Sure thing. As I turned to leave, Darren added, By the way, great save with that presentation Friday night. Janet mentioned it to me this morning. So he knew I'd fixed Trent's mistake, yet Trent would still be the one presenting at the meeting, taking credit for my work. Again. Just doing my job, I replied mechanically. Back at my desk, I pulled up the Pacific Northwest files and began organizing them for the meeting. My phone buzzed with a text from Kim in accounting. Saved your bacon again. Trent submitted expense reports with missing receipts. Fixed before Darren saw. I texted back a quick thank you. Kim and I had an unofficial alliance. She covered for Trent's administrative failings in exchange for me expediting her department's client approval requests. It was just one of many invisible arrangements I'd established throughout the company to keep things running smoothly. At 10:30, Trent finally strolled in, designer sunglasses perched on his head despite the overcast day. He nodded vaguely in my direction as he passed, typing on his phone with one hand while balancing a takeout breakfast sandwich in the other. 5 minutes later, my desk phone rang. Ethan, buddy! Trent's voice boomed through the speaker. Can you come to my office for a sec? I sighed and gathered the Pacific Northwest materials. When I entered his office, Trent was leaning back in his chair, feet propped on his desk as he scrolled through his phone. Hey man, he said without looking up. Darren says you've got the Pacific Northwest stuff ready? I placed the folder on his desk. Everything's here. The presentation's ready to go in the main conference room, and I've included talking points for each slide. Now he looked up, flashing the smile that had charmed his way through countless meetings despite his profound lack of preparation. You're the best, Rivera. Seriously, I don't know what we'd do without you. I forced a smile. Just doing my job. About that, Trent said, finally lowering his phone. I'm having trouble accessing the Pacific Northwest campaign analytics. Can you pull those reports and email them to me? Those should already be in the shared drive, I pointed out. He shrugged. You know how I am with all that technical stuff. It's much faster if you just send them directly. What he meant was, it's much faster if you do my work for me. Again. I'll send them over, I conceded. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Trent's computer screen. He wasn't struggling with campaign analytics. He was playing some online game, his character frozen mid-battle as he spoke with me. The rest of the day followed its familiar pattern. I prepared materials Trent should have prepared, answered questions he should have been able to answer, and watched from the sidelines as he took credit for my work during the Pacific Northwest meeting. What stung most wasn't the extra work. I'd long ago accepted that my actual job extended far beyond my job description. It wasn't even watching Trent bask in praise he hadn't earned. It was the knowledge that despite everything I did, I remained invisible to the people who mattered. After the meeting, I overheard Darren congratulating Trent in the hallway. "Excellent presentation, Trent." Mr. Collins seemed very impressed. "This is exactly why you're on the fast track here." "Thanks, boss," Trent replied with his trademark confidence. "Just doing what I do best." I slipped past them unnoticed and returned to my desk. A new email awaited me from Janet at Pacific Northwest. "Ethan, thank you for all your hard work on the presentation materials." Mr. Collins was very pleased. He did ask me who put together the competitive analysis section. He found it particularly insightful. "I hope you don't mind, but I told him the truth. He'd like to speak with you directly next time." A small victory, but one that would likely never reach Darren's ears. Still, it was something, a reminder that not everyone was blind to my contributions. As I packed up for the evening, Lisa stopped by my desk. "Heading out?" I nodded. "Finally. Long day. Tell me about it." She lowered her voice. "Hey, I overheard Darren talking to Ms. Nichols from HR earlier. Something about a new position opening up in client services. Thought you might want to know." My heart skipped a beat. "Really? Any details?" Lisa shook her head. "Nothing specific. Just that they're finalizing the job description this week. But from what I could tell, it sounds like something right up your alley." "Thanks for the heads up," I said, feeling a flutter of hope for the first time in months. Perhaps all my behind-the-scenes work was finally about to pay off. I left the office with renewed energy, allowing myself to imagine a future where my contributions were recognized, where I didn't have to watch someone else take credit for my work. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Little did I know how right I was, though not in the way I'd hoped. The weekend flew by in a blur of cautious optimism. For once, I allowed myself to imagine a future at Meridian where my work was recognized, where I had a title that matched my actual responsibilities instead of administrative assistant. I spent Sunday night updating my resume and rehearsing what I'd say when the position Lisa had mentioned was officially announced. Monday morning arrived with a strange energy buzzing through the office. Small clusters of employees whispered by the coffee machine, conversations abruptly halting when others approached. Even Lisa seemed oddly evasive when I dropped off her latte. "Everything okay?" I asked, noticing how she avoided eye contact. "Fine," she replied too quickly. "Just busy morning. Oh, Darren wants everyone in the conference room at 10. Mandatory meeting." My stomach fluttered. This had to be about the new position. "Did he say what it's about?" Lisa shook her head, suddenly very interested in reorganizing sticky notes on her desk. "Nope. Just said everyone needs to be there." I spent the next hour trying to focus on work while mentally rehearsing what I'd say if called upon during the meeting. By 9:55, I was a bundle of nerves as I made my way to the conference room. The space filled quickly with curious colleagues. I took a seat toward the back, nodding to Kim from accounting who slid in beside me. "Any idea what this is about?" she whispered. I shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Could be that new client services position." Kim's eyebrows shot up. "You've heard about that too? I thought." She stopped abruptly as Darren entered, followed closely by Trent and Helena Nichols from HR. "It wasn't the title or money that bothered me. It was the insult, like all my effort meant nothing." Darren beamed as he took position at the head of the table. "Thanks for coming, everyone. I've got some exciting news to share this morning." He paused for effect, scanning the room with the self-satisfied look of someone about to bestow a great gift. "As many of you know, we've been evaluating our client services structure to better serve our growing roster of premium accounts." My pulse quickened. This was it. After careful consideration, we've decided to create a new position, Client Liaison Lead. This role will serve as the primary point of contact for our VIP clients and oversee relationship management strategies across all major accounts. He was literally describing what I'd been doing unofficially for years. I sat up straighter, trying to maintain a professional expression despite the hopes surging through me. This position requires someone with exceptional communication skills, someone who can represent Meridian with the perfect blend of professionalism and charisma. Darren's gaze drifted across the room, deliberately avoiding my section. Someone who understands how to build and nurture client relationships at the highest level. He was using almost the exact language Janet from Pacific Northwest had used to describe my work in an email just last month. I felt a flash of vindication. Finally, the skills I'd been quietly demonstrating were being acknowledged as valuable. I'm thrilled to announce that after reviewing several internal candidates, we've selected Trent Dawson as our new client liaison lead, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. I sat frozen, unable to process what I'd just heard. Several colleagues turned to congratulate Trent, who stood and offered a practiced wave of humility. "Thank you, everyone. I'm honored and excited to take on this challenge," Trent said, his voice carrying that perfect blend of confidence and false modesty. "I promise to give this role everything I've got." My mind raced through disjointed thoughts. Internal candidates? I hadn't even been interviewed. I hadn't known the position existed until Lisa's hint last week. Everything I've got? Trent barely gave his existing responsibilities the bare minimum. "Ethan." Kim's voice and gentle elbow to my ribs pulled me back to reality. "You're supposed to be clapping." I mechanically joined the applause, my hands moving without connection to my numb brain. The meeting continued with Darren outlining transition plans and new reporting structures, but his words washed over me without registering. As people filed out, I remained seated, staring at the conference table where coffee rings marked past meetings where I'd quietly provided solutions while Trent dominated conversations with empty corporate jargon. "Ethan." Darren's voice startled me. The room had emptied except for us. "I need the Henderson file prepared for Trent by this afternoon. He'll be taking point on their account now." I looked up at him, searching his face for any recognition of the absurdity of this situation. "Henderson is one of our most technically complex accounts. Their campaigns involve multi-layered approval processes and custom reporting requirements." Darren nodded impatiently. "Exactly why it's perfect for Trent's new role. You can brief him on the details." "Did you consider me for this position?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Darren's expression shifted to uncomfortable surprise. "Well, Ethan, this role requires someone with presence. Someone who can command a room. You're excellent at the behind-the-scenes work, truly invaluable, but client liaison-led is a very visible position. Translation, you do the work. Trent gets the title." "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really." "Great. Henderson file by 3, if you can. And maybe put together some notes on Pacific Northwest for Trent too. Their quarterly review is coming up." Darren clapped me on the shoulder and strode out, problem solved in his mind. I remained at the table, the reality of my situation finally crystallizing with painful clarity. It didn't matter how many late nights I worked, how many client relationships I salvaged, or how much institutional knowledge I accumulated. In Darren's eyes, in the company's eyes, I would always be the invisible support structure, never the spotlighted facade. The injustice burned like acid in my chest. For 3 years, I'd quietly accepted my role, believing that eventually, merit would win out over charisma. How naive I'd been. That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at a half-written resignation letter on my laptop. Every fiber of my being wanted to quit, to walk away from the insult that was watching Trent take credit for my expertise. But something stopped me from hitting send. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was a stubborn need to prove my worth. Or maybe it was something pettier, curiosity about how long the facade could stand without its foundation. So I stopped. I stopped covering, I stopped fixing, I stopped picking up the pieces behind Trent's mistakes. Let them see what he's really capable of. Morning came with a new resolve. I arrived exactly at 9 a.m., not my usual 8:15. No coffee run, no early prep for the day's meetings. When my phone rang at 9:07, I glanced at the caller ID, Trent. I watched it ring until voicemail picked up. 3 minutes later, he appeared at my desk, hair slightly disheveled. "Ethan!" Didn't you hear your phone? I've got the Henderson call in 20 minutes and can't find the latest campaign metrics. I looked up calmly. They should be in the shared folder under Henderson Q2 reports. Trent ran a hand through his hair. I looked there. I can't find the right file. Can you just pull it up and send it to me? This call is huge. In the past, I would have immediately jumped to help, probably even offered to sit in on the call to ensure everything went smoothly. Not today. That's outside my administrative duties, I said evenly. As client liaison lead, accessing and interpreting campaign data falls under your purview now. His eyes widened slightly. Come on, man. Don't be like that. I'm in a crunch here. I turned back to my computer. I suggest checking with analytics. They're the ones who generated the report. Trent stood there for a moment, clearly expecting me to relent. When I didn't, he huffed and walked away, phone already at his ear, presumably calling someone else to solve his problem. Throughout the day, I adhered strictly to my job description. I scheduled meetings, I took messages, I managed calendars. I did not fix Trent's error-riddled presentation for Aerotech. Return calls from Pacific Northwest when they couldn't reach Trent. Prepare briefing notes for the Miller account review. Alert Darren about a potential conflict in the Westfield campaign strategy. By Wednesday morning, the tension was palpable. I passed by the client services area to find Darren huddled with Trent, their expressions grim. Snippets of their conversation drifted my way. Completely unacceptable, Darren was saying. Mrs. Johansson specifically mentioned. I know, Trent interjected. But how was I supposed to remember that she's allergic to cilantro? Nobody told me about dietary restrictions. I smiled slightly. The client dinner. ArcLight Industries was one of our oldest accounts, and Mrs. Johansson's cilantro allergy was documented in my meticulous notes. Notes I used to voluntarily share before client meetings. Notes nobody had bothered to request from me. My desk phone rang. It was Janet from Pacific Northwest. Ethan, thank God. Is Trent in today? We've been trying to reach him since yesterday. He is, I confirmed. Would you like me to transfer you? I've left 3 voicemails, Janet said, exasperation clear in her voice. It's about the Q2 projections. There's a critical error in the reporting methodology, and Mr. Collins is asking questions I can't answer. In the past, I would have immediately pulled up the projections, identified the issue, and walked Janet through the solution. Today, I simply said, I'll let Trent know you called. Again. Ethan, Janet's voice lowered. Is everything okay there? You've always been so helpful, but lately it seems like things are different. Everything's fine, I assured her. Management has simply realigned our responsibilities. Trent is your direct contact now for all matters related to Pacific Northwest's account. A long pause followed. I see, Janet finally said. Well, please tell Trent that Mr. Collins expects a call back today. Without fail. By Friday, the cracks were showing throughout the office. 3 client meetings had been rescheduled due to inadequate preparation. The Henderson account, one of our steadiest clients, had gone ominously silent after their call with Trent. And I'd overheard Lisa telling someone that ArcLight Industries had requested their contract terms be sent over for review, often corporate speak for considering termination. I sat at my desk, methodically updating the office supply inventory, a task well within my official duties, when Darren appeared. Ethan, can we talk? His usual confident demeanor had given way to something approaching desperation. I need your help with Pacific Northwest. They're threatening to pull their business. Something about incorrect projections? I looked up, expression neutral. That sounds serious. It is. Darren ran a hand through his hair. Trent says there was some sort of miscommunication, but Janet is insisting they were promised analytics we haven't delivered. Do you know anything about this? I considered my answer carefully. Pacific Northwest has always required custom quarterly projections using their internal metrics alongside our standard analytics. It's documented in their service agreement. Darren's face fell. And Trent doesn't know how to generate those. I wouldn't know what Trent knows or doesn't know, I replied. That would be a question for your client liaison lead. The words hung in the air between us, their implication unmistakable. Darren's eyes narrowed slightly as understanding dawned. You're upset about the promotion, he said. I remained silent, letting the chaos unfolding around us speak for me. Look, Ethan, I need you to be a team player here. The company needs you to step up. I folded my hands on my desk. I am being a team player, Darren. I'm doing exactly what my position requires, no more, no less. Just as the organizational chart dictates. By the end of the week, 3 long-term clients had gone dark, 2 had sent formal complaints, and the office atmosphere had shifted from competitive energy to barely concealed panic. And through it all, I simply did my job, exactly as described, nothing more. Monday morning brought with it a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. I arrived at precisely 9 a.m. again, noting the unusual number of people already huddled in conference rooms. Urgent whispers followed me as I walked to my desk, but I kept my expression neutral, offering nothing more than polite nods to colleagues who suddenly seemed very interested in my presence. The office felt tense. Emails were flying. Phones ringing off the hook. And then, the CEO showed up. Lisa intercepted me before I reached my desk, her eyes wide with barely contained anxiety. Have you checked your email? She whispered, glancing over her shoulder. I shook my head. Just got in. Pacific Northwest Holdings sent a formal notice that they're terminating their contract. Effective immediately. Her voice trembled slightly. $7 million, Ethan. Gone overnight. I maintained my composure, though the news sent a jolt through me. I hadn't expected things to unravel quite so dramatically. That's unfortunate, I said evenly. Lisa stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Unfortunate? It's catastrophic. And that's not all. ArcLight Industries and Henderson both sent similar notices this morning. She leaned closer. Darren's been in emergency meetings since 7 a.m. I've never seen him so panicked. As if summoned by his name, Darren burst from the conference room down the hall, face flushed and tie askew. His eyes locked on me, and he changed course, making a beeline for my desk. Ethan, he said, voice strained with forced calm. I need you in the Maple conference room. Now. I raised an eyebrow. Is this regarding administrative duties? Darren's jaw tightened. This is regarding the survival of this department. Conference room. 5 minutes. He stalked away without waiting for a response. I took my time gathering a notepad and pen before making my way to the conference room. Inside, I found Darren, Trent, Helena from HR, and 2 senior account managers huddled around the table, spreadsheets and client correspondence scattered across the surface. Good, you're here, Darren said as I entered. We're in crisis mode. 3 major clients have terminated their contracts, and 2 more are threatening to follow suit. Trent looked up from his phone, his usual confident demeanor replaced by barely concealed panic. I've called Pacific Northwest 5 times this morning. They won't even pick up. Henderson's legal team says we breached contract terms by failing to provide adequate account management. One of the senior managers added. They're citing severe communication deficiencies and lack of institutional knowledge. All eyes turned to me expectantly. I sat quietly, waiting. Darren ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Ethan, I need you to reach out to your contacts at these companies. Janet at Pacific Northwest, Maria at Henderson, Mrs. Johansson at ArcLight. See if you can get us a meeting, a chance to make this right. I folded my hands on the table. I'm afraid that's outside my administrative duties. The room fell silent. Darren stared at me, realization finally dawning on his face. This is about the promotion, he said flatly. Before I could respond, the conference room door swung open. Every head turned, and a collective intake of breath rippled through the room as Richard Prescott, CEO of Meridian Solutions, stood in the doorway. At 58, Prescott was a commanding presence, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He rarely ventured down from the executive floor, appearing among the rank and file only during holiday parties or when major deals were closed. Today, his expression suggested neither celebration nor new business. "I was hoping someone could explain to me," he began, voice deceptively calm, "why I received personal calls from the CMO of Pacific Northwest, the CEO of Henderson, and the VP of Marketing at ArcLight Industries this morning, all informing me they're taking their business elsewhere." No one spoke. Prescott stepped further into the room, his gaze sweeping over each face before landing on Darren. "Walsh. Your department. Your explanation." Darren swallowed visibly. "Sir, we've had some transitional challenges with our new client service structure." "Transitional challenges," Prescott repeated, each syllable dripping with skepticism. "3 of our biggest clients terminating simultaneously represents something beyond transitional challenges, wouldn't you say?" He moved to the head of the table, placing a folder down with deliberate precision. "Pacific Northwest represents $7 million in annual billings. Henderson, 4.5. ArcLight, just under 3. That's nearly $15 million walking out the door in a single morning." His voice remained level, which somehow made it more terrifying. "I'd call that an existential crisis, not a transitional challenge." Trent attempted to intervene. "Mr. Prescott, sir, I've been trying to reach out to Dawson, isn't it?" Prescott cut him off. "The newly appointed, what was it again?" "Client liaison lead," Trent supplied, voice faltering. "Right." Prescott's gaze was withering. "Interesting that when I spoke with Janet Mills at Pacific Northwest, she specifically mentioned that their account had been perfectly managed until recently. Something about quarterly projections that suddenly weren't being delivered correctly?" Trent shifted uncomfortably. "There was a misunderstanding about their reporting requirements. And when I spoke with Henderson," Prescott continued as if Trent hadn't spoken, "they mentioned that their new contact seemed completely unfamiliar with their approval protocols, causing delays that cost them an advertising window." He opened the folder, scanning its contents. "Most interesting of all, Mrs. Johansson at ArcLight specifically said, and I quote, 'No one remembered my dietary restrictions at the client dinner, and my previous contact person seems to have vanished.'" Prescott looked up, scanning the room again. "That brings me to the question that all 3 clients asked, where's Ethan? Why isn't he on these accounts anymore?" All eyes turned to me. The conference room fell into a heavy silence. Mr. Prescott's gaze settled on me, his expression unreadable. "You must be Ethan Rivera," he said, surprising me that he knew my name. I nodded, maintaining my composure. "Yes, sir. I never thought I'd see my boss sweat like that." Darren's face had indeed taken on a sheen of perspiration, his usually confident posture now rigid with tension. Trent stared fixedly at the table, suddenly fascinated by the wood grain. "Mr. Rivera," Prescott continued, "would you mind joining me in my office? I believe we have some matters to discuss." It wasn't a request. I rose from my seat, aware of the mixture of confusion, resentment, and fear on the faces around me. As we left, I heard Prescott instruct Helena from HR to join us in 15 minutes. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent. Prescott's office was exactly what you'd expect from a CEO, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown Chicago. He gestured for me to take a seat across from his desk. "So," he began, settling into his chair, "you're the administrative assistant who apparently holds the key to $15 million in client relationships." I considered my words carefully. "I'm an administrative assistant, yes. That's your title," Prescott agreed. "But I'm more interested in what you actually do here. Or did until recently." I reached into my messenger bag and pulled out a folder I'd prepared over the weekend, not quite expecting this particular meeting, but knowing that eventually, some form of reckoning would come. I walked in with a folder of records, emails, call logs, custom solutions I'd created for clients over the last 2 years. I didn't blame anyone. I just laid out the facts. I placed the folder on his desk and opened it to reveal meticulously organized documentation. These are records of client communications, solutions implemented, and relationship management protocols I've developed over the past 2 years. Prescott's eyebrows rose slightly as he began to flip through the pages. I continued, my voice steady. The first section contains email correspondence where clients specifically reached out to me rather than their assigned account managers. The second contains logs of after-hours calls I fielded to resolve urgent issues. The third outlines custom reporting solutions I created for clients like Pacific Northwest, whose unique requirements weren't being met by our standard templates. He studied a page detailing the cilantro allergy incident with Mrs. Johansson, then looked up at me. "Why are you showing me this?" "Context," I replied simply. "You asked why I wasn't on these accounts anymore. The truth is, officially, I never was. My title is Administrative Assistant. My job description involves scheduling, correspondence, and calendar management. But over time, I became the de facto relationship manager for our most demanding clients, the ones who needed consistent attention and specialized knowledge." Prescott continued turning pages, his expression growing more focused with each document. "And recently you stopped performing these unofficial duties." "I began adhering strictly to my official job description," I confirmed. "After it became clear that the value of my contributions wasn't recognized." He closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "You mean after Trent Dawson was promoted to client liaison lead?" I nodded once. Prescott listened without a word. Then he asked, "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" Prescott's question hung in the air between us. Why had I silently shouldered responsibilities far beyond my title for years? Why had I allowed others to take credit for my work? Why hadn't I demanded recognition? I answered, because I thought results mattered more than recognition. The words left my mouth without planning, but they were true. I had believed in the meritocracy myth, that good work would eventually be noticed and rewarded. That substance would eventually triumph over style. Prescott studied me for a long moment before speaking. "That's an admirable philosophy, Mr. Rivera. Unfortunately, in business as in life, what isn't seen often isn't valued." He tapped the folder. "This shouldn't have been necessary. Your contributions should have been recognized long before now." A knock at the door announced Helena's arrival. Prescott invited her in, then turned back to me. "Mr. Rivera, I'd like you to return to your desk for now. Say nothing about our conversation to anyone. Can you do that?" I nodded and stood to leave. "And one more thing," he added. "Would you be willing to reach out to Janet at Pacific Northwest? Not to fix anything yet, just to let her know we're addressing the situation and would appreciate a brief grace period before they finalize their departure." "I can do that," I said. "Thank you." His expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I believe in results over recognition too. But I also believe in proper alignment between contribution and compensation." As I left his office, I caught a glimpse of Prescott opening my folder again, gesturing for Helena to take a seat. Their serious expressions told me this wasn't just damage control, something more fundamental was shifting. Back at my desk, I sent a carefully worded email to Janet. Within minutes, my phone rang. "Ethan." Janet's voice was a mixture of relief and concern. "What on earth is happening there?" "The new guy, Trent, he's completely out of his depth. We've been trying to reach you for days. There's been some internal restructuring," I explained diplomatically. "Mr. Prescott is personally looking into the situation. Would it be possible for Pacific Northwest to give us a few days before finalizing any decisions?" Janet sighed. "For you, I'll talk to Mr. Collins. But Ethan, be honest with me, are you back on our account or not? Because frankly, that's going to determine his answer." The question hung in the air. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope. "That," I said, "is currently being determined." The next week unfolded like a corporate drama nobody saw coming, nobody except perhaps Mr. Prescott, who moved with the calculated precision of someone executing a long-planned strategy. Trent was demoted. Darren was reassigned. And I got an office with a view. Monday morning began with Trent being summoned to HR. He returned to his desk 30 minutes later, ashen-faced, to collect his personal items. The whispers started immediately. He hadn't been fired, but reassigned to the junior account support team. The same day, an IT specialist arrived to remove his gaming software from his company laptop. The gaming thing wasn't even the worst part. Lisa told me in a hushed voice by the coffee machine. Apparently Prescott had IT pull his computer activity logs. He averaged less than 2 hours of actual work per day for the past 6 months. By Tuesday, Darren's corner office was being cleared out. The official announcement came via email. Darren Walsh will be transitioning to our operations documentation team, effective immediately. A corporate euphemism if ever there was one, operations documentation was where careers went to die. A small team responsible for updating procedure manuals nobody ever read. Wednesday morning, Helena from HR appeared at my desk. "Mr. Rivera, would you come with me, please?" She led me not to the HR department but to a vacant office on the eastern side of the building, one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A nameplate had already been mounted beside the door, Ethan Rivera, Director of Client Strategy. "Mr. Prescott would like to see you once you've settled in," Helena said, handing me a folder. "This contains your new employment agreement, including salary adjustments and team structure." I opened it after she left, staring in disbelief at the figure on the compensation page, nearly triple my current salary. The organizational chart showed a team of 4 reporting directly to me, with dotted line connections to every major account in the company. Prescott was waiting in his office when I arrived, the folder from our previous meeting open on his desk alongside new documents. "Congratulations, Mr. Rivera," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Though I think we both know this is long overdue." "Thank you, sir," I managed, still processing the whirlwind of changes. "I've spoken personally with all 3 clients who terminated their contracts," he continued. "Janet at Pacific Northwest was particularly enlightening. Did you know she's kept a separate file of solutions you've provided them over the years? Called it the Ethan Protocol." I hadn't known, but I wasn't entirely surprised. Janet had always been methodical. "All 3 have agreed to reinstate their contracts, contingent upon you overseeing their accounts moving forward." Prescott leaned back in his chair. "Which brings me to your new role. Director of Client Strategy isn't just a title, it's a new position altogether. You'll have autonomy over our VIP client relationships and resources to implement the systems you've been creating on your own all this time." I found my voice. "What about Trent? Mr. Dawson is fortunate to still have employment with Meridian," Prescott said dryly. "His gaming habits finally caught up to him. But rather than termination, I've given him an opportunity to prove his value in a more structured environment. Sometimes people need to be right-sized into roles that match their actual capabilities." "And Darren?" Prescott's expression hardened slightly. "Darren's failure wasn't promoting Trent, it was failing to recognize the talent right in front of him. That kind of leadership blind spot is dangerous in client services." He slid a document across the desk to me. "This is the announcement going out company-wide this afternoon. I wanted you to see it first." The memo was brief but clear, announcing my new role and emphasizing the importance of recognizing and nurturing talent at all levels of the organization. It was validation in its purest form. Over the next month, I methodically rebuilt the client relationships that had nearly collapsed. I documented the processes I'd developed intuitively over the years, trained my new team in the nuances of each major client, and established clear protocols for communication and accountability. I passed Trent occasionally in the hallways. He nodded awkwardly but never quite made eye contact. The gaming software never reappeared on his computer. Darren was rarely seen outside the operations department, though rumors suggested he was applying for positions at other firms with little success. Apparently, losing $15 million in client contracts overnight created a reputation that traveled fast in our industry. 6 weeks after my promotion, Janet from Pacific Northwest visited our offices. After her meeting with the account team, she stopped by my new office. "Nice view," she remarked, admiring the lake vista. Though I have to say, I liked you better when you didn't have a nameplate. I smiled. That makes two of us. But it turns out titles do matter. Not the title, Janet corrected. The recognition. You always did the work, Ethan. Now everyone else just knows it too. She glanced around the office. Did you throw a fit when they passed you over? Stage some dramatic confrontation? I shook my head. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't play games. I just did my job, and eventually, they all saw who really ran the show. Janet nodded approvingly. Corporate karma at its finest. She checked her watch. I should go. Mr. Collins is actually excited about this quarter's projections for the first time in months. As she left, I turned to face the view from my new office. The landscape of downtown Chicago stretched before me, a visual reminder of how much had changed. I hadn't sought vengeance or orchestrated Trent's downfall or Darren's reassignment. I had simply stopped compensating for their inadequacies and let reality take its course. Sometimes the most powerful statement is silence, and sometimes karma arrives wearing a tailored suit and carrying a corner office key with your name on it.